And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Brilliantly Resilient Live. I'm Kristin Smedley with my buddy Mary Fran Bontempo, and we have another fabulous episode for you today. And I'm actually really excited because, first of all, the three of us get to channel our whole educator teaching vibe because we have a teacher on the line, and we get to dive in a little bit to talk about something we haven't been able to talk about yet, and that is how are we helping our kids in their own reset, rise, and reveal their brilliance at this time, which we're in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, and schools have been closed, and a lot of states now are announcing that they're not reopening anytime soon. So we've got Ming Shelby with us, and we've got a huge agenda for you, Ming. So I hope you have a lot of coffee.
All the world's problems today.
And that's what we're expecting. So we're going to turn it over to you, solve all the problems, write our book for us, and we will drink some coffee. No, I'm so glad you're here.
So we usually start, Ming, we talk about the reset that people have. So like if there was a period or some kind of thing that you experienced that was a challenge that kind of had you either, Kristin and I call them sucker punches and train wrecks. So I don't know if you've had that experience. I think everybody has to one degree or another.
Never, not a single time.
So let's start there. And again, keeping in mind your education experience, because we want to hear how that weaves into this.
Totally. So I've been sharing this story a lot more lately. I remember being 10 years old in like 3rd or 4th grade and walking past my mom's room, just like twirling and just dancing and having a great time. And I said, "Mom, isn't the world such an amazing place with so many interesting, weird people? Like, I just love how vibrant the world is," right? And then she turned to me and she goes, "You let other people be weird, you be normal." And I was like, wait, why would she say that? And it kind of just like, it felt like a sucker punch in that moment of, wait, my mom doesn't really want me to be who I am. She wants me to kind of like fit in this pretty box of what society thinks I should be. And I think part of it, as I've been reflecting and growing up, is that I grew up in the suburbs. Everyone had like really pretty blonde hair with these gorgeous highlights, and I just stood out with my black hair and my black eye. You're right. I wanted the blonde highlights. I remember putting sun in my hair, like trying to fit in.
No. Did it
doesn't
turn
work.
Hi, buddy.
Hi. Sorry.
How you doing, bud? So your hair turned orange, I'm guessing?
Never. Nothing happened, Mary Fran.
Really? Well, maybe that was just me then, because mine turned orange.
Mine turned orange too.
So that must have been really hard at a time when, like 10 years old, you're still forming your identity, and you were like told that you had to be a certain thing.
Yes. And I think, in my mind, I remember saying, "Oh, forget my mom. She's just being silly. Like, she just wants to fit in." But looking back, I think I subconsciously held on to that because in everything that I did, I was pretty careful. Like, okay, like I should do this. This is what someone who fits in looks like. This is how I can continue to be. Like, I think I hid a little bit of me in every step of my life. And then I got another big sucker punch last year at work when I was expressing some new ideas of what we could do for our students. We were really focused on bringing positive psychology, on having our students practice gratitudes, and I had some ideas, and then my supervisor was kind of like, no, like your voice is not important here. Like, you do what we tell you to do. Like, this isn't. And it was just like marching to the beat of a soldier, right? Like we just put our heads down and we keep moving. And I really had to reevaluate, like, what are my values? Like, what is important to me? And how can I'm influencing students, right? I'm influencing kids. So I can't be like, oh, I'm all here, but then telling my students to be who they are and to be vibrant. So there was a big journey of reflection of what are my true values as a person, as an educator.
Wow, that's cool. I mean, we just started uncovering in this journey with Mary Fran and I talking about and teaching about and researching about resilience. We realized just last week that values are a huge part of of how we reset and why we get off balance in the first place, and take that sucker punch, and why it's so hard to get back up. And that's part of the whole reset of, we're doing a webinar and a course, as we're diving into all of it. We're like, oh my God, values are a big thing. I'm so happy that you just brought that up.
Yeah. So one thing that I did that I think your audience members will like too is the website called Via Character. Have you heard of this before?
No, via like VIA?
Okay.
Yeah, VIA.
VIA. And I will I'll send you the link too. It's totally free, and it tells you what are your signature strengths.
Oh,
wow. Oh, we were looking for something like this.
Yeah.
We want stuff like that. Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So did you do that? Did you figure out your signature strengths?
I did, and I don't know if this is going to be a surprise to you, but I was surprised at my signature strength. Have you ever like done something you're like, wait, really?
You know, I think we end up, and this goes back to exactly what you were saying before about when we get into those parts where we are forming our identities and we take a lot in from other people, and they tell us that we're either good at this or bad at that, or whatever. We internalize all that, and it sometimes really does go against the grain of what our own tendencies are. But because we're so conditioned to kind of, you know, take in and then reflect society back what they want to see, what society wants to see, I think sometimes it is a shock when you go, wow, I didn't think that I was going to be good at that.
Mary Fran, I mean, how many of you have ever had an adult tell you like you're not good at something or don't do something, and you kind of just subconsciously hold that, right?
Yeah.
So tell us what one of your surprise strengths was. I'm curious.
Okay, my number one. So I always thought, I was like, I love learning. I thought I really prided myself on that. So I thought that would be my number one. But my number one is humor.
Hey, this girl's speaking my language.
Yeah, so
I love it.
Hey, don't replace me on this show, Mary Fran. I just see the look on your face.
If you promise not to text me at 5:30 in the morning, you're in.
Oh, I promise I will never text you at 5:30 a.m. Yeah, so I started
humor. That's wild.
I know. So I started telling my friends, I'm like, you guys, I took this survey. Do you know humor is my number one? And they all started laughing. They were like, duh. Like, all you do, you're hilarious. All we do is laugh together. So then I started looking for more humor in my life. So that was so fun.
You know what I think that points to, and Kristin and I have talked about this, people think that they have to really search for their strengths and their talents. And it's those things that are natural to us that come so naturally, and they're second nature, and we almost don't think about it. And that's the part that we are trying to like point people, like we keep saying, your brilliance isn't hard to find.
It's there.
Like, it's the stuff that you like. It's the stuff that you're good at. It's the stuff that you do naturally. So that fits right in with that.
So it's interesting too, because when you came on, now we've never met, and then when you came on, I'm like, you just have this instantaneous vibe that we were like, because we're like, oh my God, there's a storm, and I'm like, I've been on the phone with Comcast because my internet is down, and all this stuff. And then you come on, and you and I are texting. I'm like, maybe check your spam folder for the link. Oh my God, and then you come on, and we're like, we're having a good time within 5 seconds. So I can totally see humor being one of your top thing. That's interesting.
Thanks, Kristin. I can't wait for you two to take it. I'm so curious what yours are.
Me either. So given all of that, and even given what happened to you just within with last year, with your kind of being pushed down again, how did you sort of adjust your thinking to do this sort of what we call the rise, where you go, okay, wait, this is not how I want to be. I want to change things up. So how did you do that? I mean, obviously the first thing you did was take that test.
Yeah. So it was really looking within and having the courage to be like, to say, I can do better. I deserve better. And I think that so often that when we're faced with difficult choices, it's easy to stay in our zone of preference of, this is comfortable, this is good, like it's not that bad, like I can do this. And we never ask the question of, what if it's better? What if I'm even more fulfilled? What if I'm really living into my values? And so I decided to take a chance on myself and really find things that aligned with my integrity. Because at the end of the day, like, I have to feel good about what I'm doing and what I'm putting out there. And I can't let others decide or influence that for me.
So did you switch careers, or did you stay where you were?
So I switched careers, but I'm still in education. But and you know what's crazy is after I switched, I'm like, oh, like it felt like this huge weight was lifted off, that I was excited to go to work. I was excited to see people who I was with. And this is what was totally crazy. My family life was so much better. I didn't realize that I was bringing all that baggage home with me to my husband, to my kids. Like, I was like, wait, Ryan, we haven't fought about anything in a week. Something's wrong here.
What's going on?
What's going on? Why are we so balanced?
Why are we getting along? Well, it's really interesting that you say that, because I think we still in this country have this puritanical notion that work has to be hard, like it has to be something that we struggle to do. And unfortunately, we can't all work in areas that we are excited with and that we love and all that. But we should all be looking towards finding a way to at least incorporate, again, some of your values. There has to be something about your work that feeds you in some way. And I think it's interesting that you saw that shift when you were able to let go of those things that were not ringing true to you.
Yeah, it was definitely hard, because I was in that organization for 13 years, and I loved it. And I loved being with the students and the work that we were doing, but I knew that there was something more for me. And so really it was leaning into good friends, hearing other people's stories of courage, of how they were rising and how it's possible. Because when you're in the thick of it, you're like, oh, well, that would work for that person, or that, Kristen's got it under control. Like she has it figured out. Mary Fran, no, like that couldn't be me. I'm like, right.
No, we don't. Nope.
And I think it can be true for anyone. We just have to have the willingness to put ourselves out there to find that.
And what an opportunity now for so many people around the globe, not even just in this country, as things are ending. And it is so hard when jobs are ending and finances are tight and all. But I just said to my kids again this morning, as we were talking about some different challenges, I said, I've never been so happy to have had the courage 3 years ago, when I had to make a choice with my divorce, go into like a more corporate and a definitive, like everybody was like, find the definitive 9 to 5, Kristin, like we got to have the definitive money and benefits and all. And I'm like, oh, but I knew I was on the cusp with creativity and the book. And I'm like, I need to just hang in there, give it 2 years. And within like 18 months, then everything started to, and it's hard. It is so hard to flip that switch and have that courage that you're talking about. But when you can hang in there and still, I think it's really important that you found your values too, because when you align yourself with all of that, because I didn't do any tests or anything, but I did the Sally Hogshead one, and I came out as the people's champion. So I stayed in with my nonprofit that I had started, and I stayed with writing a book for moms that got a blindness diagnosis. I stayed serving as a people's champion, and that's what catapulted stuff. And now that my kids are home and people are scrambling as schools are closing, I'm like, thank God I had the courage to do that, because I don't know what would be happening to us now, So it is an interesting time for people to take a look to maybe make that move that they've wanted to make, or start the side hustle thing now, little baby steps, while we're all forced to sit here and take a look of what's going to happen. But courage is the big word. I'm so glad you used that word. That's what it's hard.
It is hard. And there's not like a blueprint of like, okay, this is what courage looks like. You take step A, then hop over to the blue square, and then
like you have to in the grocery store now, hopping from one square to the next, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And Mary Fran, I know you want to do it. Say your courage thing. I know you've been dying.
Best way to say that word. It's the Cowardly Lion from The Wizard of Oz. You have to go, courage. It's the best way to say the word.
She says it, it comes up.
It's the best way. But, you know, all of that ties into another thing that Kristin and I talk about. And when you take those steps, and they are leaps of faith, you can't be married to the outcome. You have to recognize that whatever this journey is, like you say, there's no blueprint. You don't know what's going to happen down the road, and it may end up looking like something completely different. I mean, when I started all this all these years ago, I was just going to start a blog and make $1 million because that's what you did, you know. Until I found out that you didn't.
And how's the million treating you, Mary Fran?
Right?
You probably have tens of millions by now.
I know, by now, right? You would think, but that's not the way it worked out. However, all these other cool things that I had nowhere on my plan, and certainly Kristin and I have talked about this was nowhere on our plans, any of this stuff. But it's so cool and it's amazing. And if you do have the courage to take those leaps of faith. So continue with your story. What did you do in making all these shifts?
So, you know, I had a really great group of friends who helped me, and talking through to them with, okay, what does my next step look like? And they're like, you don't know. You just have to find something that really leans into your values, because if you just jump into another position or you just jump into something else without knowing what their values are, you're going to be in the same situation. So really having the group of friends that I could count on, just listening, no judgment. And what's really interesting is that another friend of mine, a really good friend, she was going through a divorce at the same time that I was experiencing this. And all of our feelings matched, even though we were in different situations, like feeling betrayed or feeling hurt or any of that. And then we would just talk through it, and lots of debrief. We had like our own little therapy sessions going on. But really that is what helped me. And so what I'm currently doing that I love is curating stories of courage, because hearing other people's stories of courage is what helped me make that leap. And I want everyone to be able to like be bold and passionate and courageous in their one big, beautiful life. And so that's how I would love to give back.
Wow.
And all of that comes back to that idea of not defining yourself in a way that others would define you.
Exactly. Of being true to who you are, which is so hard.
Especially when half the time you don't know. Like you're still evolving as a person too. So I think that's the part that's difficult. Like you're like, okay, well, this is who I am. And then you try things and maybe it doesn't work out. But you have to give yourself the grace to experiment.
Yeah. And like keep putting yourself out there, you know. I think that's the hardest thing, is keep trying, like you're saying, Mary Fran, of trying different things. I also went on artist dates. Have you heard of this? The artist date?
No.
It's from Julie Cameron. She wrote the book, The Artist Way, and it's about.
Oh, I love that book. I love her.
Yes. Like unlocking your creativity. Cause I was like, what's more for me? Like, do I stay in education? Do I do something else? And the artist date is these one-on-one solo dates that you just go by yourself doing something that you love. And one of the first things that I did was Abby Wambach's Wolfpack came out.
Yeah.
Do you love that book too?
I had heard that speech that she did, and that's what that was based on, that book. Oh my God. I was like making my daughter listen to it nonstop.
Yes, she should. Not that we should on anyone, but
it's so good. And as a matter of fact, Mary Fran Gardella one of our friends, Jen Gardella, was on a couple weeks ago. We would text each other and she would go, ow, doing the whole wolf thing. I love that book. Anyway, go on. I love Abby Wambach. She's just so
I feel like this brilliantly resilient group is its own wolf pack. Like you're creating your wolf pack right now.
Yes, look at you. All right, do not replace me on this show, Mary Fran.
I'm making notes. I'm just saying.
Right?
Yes, it is its own wolf pack.
Yes. So I'm trying to find it, but one of the things that she said that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna read it to you if that's okay.
Yeah.
Is She said, "What I learned is that the most inspiring thing on earth is a woman who believes in herself, who gives 100%, and who owns her greatness unapologetically."
Yes.
Oh, I love that. Now, is that Abby or is that Julie Cameron?
That's Abby.
That one's Abby's. So that was my first artist date, is I just went by myself to go, and I'm like nerding out sitting there. And like when I'm at the movie theater, I always like want to grab the person next to me, like, did you see that? And so I'm like, oh, I can't really touch the stranger next to me. But so I'm like writing notes and really getting in touch with letting my own thoughts influence me versus my friends' thoughts influence me.
That's a really, really powerful point, because we do talk a lot about the tribe and the need for the tribe and the need to, have people who see your strengths and your power in a certain way. However, there is an equally important part where you need to get your brain quiet and just settle in with yourself. So I love that idea of going on those artist dates solo, because, Kristin, you run. I'll go out for a walk or whatever. I mean, whatever. I do not run. I'll run in little
Me
spurts.
neither, Mary Fran.
So,
Sorry.
but that idea of being by yourself and really checking in with you and your own feelings and what's resonating with you, that's so important. And we don't talk about that as much as we talk about the tribe, but it's really important. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. And you know what, to just give one more point about Abby, she talks in that whole book about, that quote is perfect about being, yourself and standing in your own greatness. But she also, she found a balance, because she also, I actually used one of her quotes in a big acceptance speech that I did in the fall about, she says that she never scored a goal, because she's the leading international goal scorer. I never scored a goal without somebody passing me the ball. And she talks about in Wolfpack, but you have to stand there and say, pass me the effing ball. Like, you have to pass, you have to ask for it. You have to step into it and take that shot. But she acknowledges the help of the tribe and the Wolfpack, by saying that. But that whole thing was, oh my God, when she did that Bernard College speech, I was like, my neighbors are probably still remembering me walking around with it in my headphones. And I'm like, yes, every morning. I planted, I'll never forget, I planted grass seed out in my backyard, and I'd stand there at the hose and I'm like, yes. Neighbors are like, oh good, she's inspired again.
I wish I could be your neighbor, Kristin.
Oh, we'd have a good time. But my neighbors are like, oh boy, here we go. I won't use certain pesticides and all that. They're like, here she goes with spreading vinegar on all the dandelions. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny.
Funny.
Yeah. That's great to bring in Abby Wambach. That's a good, she is a cool person. Oh my God. Now I want to have this be Mary Fran, can we make this a 3-hour show? Can it be like Gilligan?
Oh yeah, we absolutely could. I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, we're not going to pay attention to that.
I see that look. She looks at the clock. Well, let's do this. We're going to have you back on the show, Ming.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I would love that.
Because we have so much more to talk about. But we talked briefly before we hit record and before we went live about some tips for parents with kids, especially in this, helping them do their own rise and reset. So let's just if we can touch on that real quick.
Yeah. So one thing, as you heard one of my children screaming earlier at the start of the show, is we're with them a lot now, like all the time. And I don't know if you're supposed to be with your kids that many hours a day, but we are.
Thank God mine are out of the house. That's all I can say. Girls, I'm here by myself.
I'm moving in with you.
There's light at the end of the tunnel.
There is. I love them, but
So I have twins, toddlers, and they're 3. So they're going through this phase of asking why a lot, like why? And I just said, I go, do you have to be so curious? And I was like, oh, I'm doing it to him. Oh my, and I apologize for it. And so I think one thing as parents is we really have to give ourselves grace and our kids grace of being who they are, of letting them explore during this time. I know we're so worried about like what math facts we have to get done or whatever, but what are they really interested in? This is such a fun time that we can really capitalize on that. Like my boys love to cook, so we've been making all these great meals with measuring and putting in different ingredients. And I just love seeing their interests come alive because they're in school usually during this time. So we don't get to do all of that.
Yeah.
So I think that one is amazing. One of my friends, she's doing the 100-day project with her kids. It's 100 days of creativity. And her 10-year-old spent 2 hours building a fake barbecue and Play-Doh and turning it into a stop motion video and just letting him explore his creativity. It's amazing
cool.
how our kids are resetting and rising too, right? Letting them have that time. And then creating new experiences for them of going on nature walks if you're allowed to go outside in the backyard. I'm not an outdoors person at all. I personally do not enjoy the outdoors, but my kids do. So I'm like, okay, this is not about me. This is about them, right? Like courage in parenting is not letting our fear dictate how their experiences are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like that.
So giving time for that. And then one thing that I love is seeking feedback. I'm always seeking feedback from my kids of, okay, how did that go for you? Did you like that? Did you not? Which part did you like? What can I do better as a mom to support you? I know, telling 3-year-olds, they're like, what does that mean? You know?
As long as your feedback is not, is it okay if mommy does this? That drives me crazy when people ask that question. You're the mommy, so yes, it's okay.
Yeah.
Is it okay if mommy and daddy go out on a date? No, you don't ask that question.
No, you don't need their permission.
But you bring up a valid point. I do think that sometimes we don't validate their feelings because they're young and this and that. And it certainly doesn't hurt to ask those questions and allow them to recognize early on, even if they can't formulate what their opinion is, that their opinion is important and that they're a part of your family and the way things are run. That's good tips. I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hard though. Go ahead. Sorry, Kristin.
And you said courage in parenting, and I think that's a big word. That's a big deal in parenting, is having the courage to like you said, not let your fears dictate. I mean, I'm a mom of 2 blind kids, and that's a big thing in the blind community. Parents let their fear drive how they're raising their blind kids, and not many of them have been in the emergency room so many times for stitches that I knew a bunch of the nurses there from the elementary school, and they called it the Smedley Suite because the boys had been there so many times. It was always their eyebrow. I'm like, can you bang up like your elbow or something? This looks ridiculous. They have lines in their eyebrows. But, having the courage to do that. But I will say also that I realize, I never say that blindness is a blessing, but you'll appreciate this. I do say that the blessing that came from it was when my kids were little, I didn't have any role models yet of what blind people did. I didn't know what they were going to do. So I just had to get them what they need. I always say I get them what they need and follow their lead. And I took all of my dreams off of them. And I really think when I listen to some of my girlfriends that are so frustrated, them and their teenagers are banging heads. And I'm like, I think you're making them live your life that you wanted them to live. Yeah. And they're not living their own way, making their own mistakes and all of that. But our kids are living under the weight of what we want for them plus what they want for them. And that's where you have to have that courage. I mean, lucky for me, it was just like, it was gone. So I get to, free pass there, but everybody else, of course you have hopes and dreams that you have to kind of back off of and have the courage to let them go do it. And then sit there and go, I freaking knew that was going to happen. I knew you were going to fall off of that thing. I knew that was a bad choice of a major for you, but they got to figure it out.
They got to figure it out.
This has been a brilliant conversation. This is so many great things.
It's been so much fun. And one quick thing that before we ask you where people can find you. So you said you were curating people's stories. Are you putting them in a book? Are you speaking about it? What are you doing with that? Is that a project that you're working on?
Yes, Mary Fran. Right now it's on my Instagram, and then I'm launching a podcast in the next couple of months.
Cool.
Yes, and it's going to be called Courage Up, and it's me talking to people about how they were courageous and the benefit of that courage move, and what is their life like based on that.
Oh,
So,
that's
I
fantastic.
love that.
I love that,
yes.
Ming. So where can people find you now, Ming?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram at Ming Shelby, that's it, or on my website, www.mingshelby.com.
Perfect.
Awesome. All right, this has been.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. This has been, it really has been a fun and incredibly enlightening conversation. And I really like that you've just validated a lot of mine and Mary Fran's points that we talk about. Because sometimes we can do a thing where like, we are brilliant. We are brilliant. Does anybody else know? Does anyone else agree? And then I'm like, ooh, bing, bing, all these different things. It's great. So thanks so much for coming on. And I'll see you in the in Trisha's group, right? At Trisha Brooks group. And for all of our listeners, make sure you go look up Ming. I can't wait to go check out all these stories of courage. That's going to be a really cool podcast to listen to. I am podcast obsessed. So I'll be on that as soon as it's ready. And I'll see you on Instagram. Everybody go follow Ming on Instagram. And we will see you on the next episode of Brilliantly Resilient Live. See us.
Bye.